See, it's got a clap on the screen now.
All right.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the first ever episode of Conversations by the Sea, our podcast. I'm sorry if there are any like crazy sounds. There's a lot going on.
Woo.
We're not audio people. I've got like a million wires here, so I'm just trying to like not cause too many problems. And I'm also trying to do a video side of it as well. So if you're watching this on YouTube, hello. If you're listening on what?
You're always trying to do everything all at once, aren't you? Like new podcast, new video.
I've never done just like one thing by half. Always got to do it like the best possible way. So Craig finally agreed to co-host with me because I didn't want it to just be me chatting on. Anyway, I haven't introduced myself. My name's Ellen and I am the founder and MD of Content by the Sea. We're copywriting and web design, like twosome, I guess. And I also write a podcast about also write a newsletter. I guess now I write a podcast. I also write a newsletter called Conversations by the Sea about mental health and freelancing. And this is Craig, my partner and creative director.
Yep. I came into the business in September after leaving agency jobs, which I'd worked in for a long time. So in this podcast, I'll probably trash talk agencies quite a bit. But I've loved self-employment so far, and hopefully I can offer some insight into what it's like taking that leap and sort of joining your partner's business and becoming financially dependent on each other's output.
Yeah. We're recording this in February 2021, just in case anyone's listening in the future. So we're still mid-pandemic, and it's actually put in during lockdown number 3, and the weather is torrential outside, so there's not really much else to do other than paint Warhammer, start a podcast. Realise that I'm kind of falling off the screen because I keep talking to my microphone like I'm in a recording studio, and Craig's informed me that I don't need to do that. So you'll have seen by the title of today's episode what we're going to talk about. So if you read the newsletter, you'll know that I talk about mental health in my own experience. I talk about grief and anti-hustle culture, I guess, and living slow, and also where that crosses over with running a business. And Craig also is very passionate about these subjects, and I thought first episode, without getting too complicated, we would talk about Craig's recent ADD diagnosis, attention deficit disorder, and how that affects his work life and what it's been like getting diagnosed with something that traditionally kids are diagnosed with when they're young, but as a 29-year-old man. So do you want to just talk about how you ended up getting diagnosed with this and what the process was?
Yeah, so ADD, obviously you can tell that I'm probably not a stereotypical hyperactive person if you're watching this video and I'm just sitting here. But ADD rather than ADHD lacks a hyperactivity element, but all of the other facets of it come together. So, you know, the lack of attention, the carelessness with detail, the inability to focus on conversations, things like that, which I've had my whole life. And ordinarily I just thought that was like who I was and part of me. But it's become quite debilitating over time, and you know, I've struggled in my life with anxiety and depression and never really known the cause, and I think that having sought this diagnosis and you know went through the sort of NHS rigmarole, which I'll talk about later. I'm a big pro NHS guy, by the way. I'm not saying that to trash them, it's just their mental health service is very slow,
Underfunded, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you need help, you're looking at least a year to wait. So what happened was, when we came back from Australia, which I suppose is another episode, because that was a really traumatic time for both of us. I sort of fell into a depression at the same kind of time as Ellen, but for different reasons. Obviously, she was dealing with a lot of grief because she lost her mother, sadly, which I suppose I had secondhand grief for, but I was also grieving the loss of like the life we had in Sydney, which is, I always feel guilty about that because, you know, Ellen lost something real and I just lost a nice beach and stuff, but it meant more to me than that at the time. You know, I felt like, having grown up in like the northeast, it was like a massive opportunity, and you know, I had
not everybody from your hometown gets the opportunity to go and like not visit Australia, never mind live there and earn the kind of money we were earning and live on the beach and stuff. So even though at the time I was probably very unsympathetic, well, I was unsympathetic of your grief because my grief was like overwhelming. Now 2 years have passed almost. I look back and say I can like feel why you felt that way, but at the time I wasn't very sympathetic of your grief. So that was like a really interesting time. But that was when I started the business and decided to go freelance, and you were kind of in between deciding what you were going to do?
Yeah, so when I came back, in Sydney, I had a job at a place called Open Colleges, which is like a large education organisation. So it was a city, like traditional city job, in that it was in like a skyscraper building on a massive office with loads of employees, which was funny for me because I'd always worked in relatively small marketing agencies. So it was quite interesting working in such a large organisation. And when I got home, I kind of freelanced. Well, I didn't freelance. I finished my contract with them and worked remotely for a month, which was really kind of them because it allowed me to still earn a salary, like in Australian money, which is more than you would earn in the Northeast, and just gave me a month of buffer while I was sort of getting my bearings from just having had my life, what I thought was going to be my life, like completely pulled out from under us again.
Down. Yeah.
So, but the reason I mention all of this is because it's a good background to like kind of I fell into the worst depression I've ever been in, really, and so did Ellen, which is understandable. So I ended up sort of succumbing and taking medication for that, which is called sertraline. It's an antidepressant. And I know that antidepressants have, mixed opinions and mixed research. And
maybe we can do an episode about medicating.
Yeah.
But having both of us have an experience with that. But although we're not medical doctors, we both have personal experience with that. So maybe that would be a good episode topic.
Yeah. And I don't want to like, I never want to come across in any of these like a mental health expert who's dispensing any advice.
Yeah, both of us are just on a mission to talk about our own experiences. Neither of us are qualified in any way, so hopefully you'll find some solace knowing that we're just two humans talking about feelings, but equally
we're just wading through like
yeah, just like grasping, and we're just a bit overshare. Well, I'm definitely an oversharer, and then sometimes I try and get Craig to come along on the ride. So
yeah, and once I start talking, I never shut up. So I ended up taking a medication and it actually really, really helped. Obviously it has its ups and downs, but it like curbed away a lot of the anxiety I used to feel about everything. But I realised that free of that anxiety and depression, I was still having the same kind of strange inability to focus on things and, jumping from thing to thing and just like feeling like I could never like get anything really done, even though in my life I've always been traditionally productive. I was like, what? I just don't understand. Like, I always feel like I'm swimming an uphill battle or wading through tar trying to get, like, menial tasks done.
Yeah.
Even things like changing my doctors, which I still need to do now. I've been living in this house for a year. I still haven't done it because it's just, like, a tiny little thing that I just put off and put off and put off.
And I think some of the big, like, symptoms or the results of the symptoms of ADD can be misconstrued as, like, laziness.
Yeah.
And I think that caused a lot of conflict between us for a long time because... forgetting to do things. And even now, like, I'll say to put your shoes in the cupboard when you come in from the dog walk, and he won't, most of the days he won't do it. And back in the day I would have thought that was like a lazy thing, but actually there's no there's no malicious intent behind any of those things. It's just the way that his brain works. He's probably playing chess on his phone or something at the same time. And I know obviously if you're a female living with a male, you might be listening to this and thinking, well, that's just what men are like. But it's a very extreme version of quote unquote what men are like. The attention jumping from one thing to another is like nothing I've ever seen, and then obviously as a result it's very exhausting. And I think I'm obviously talking for you here, but I think that the depression and the anxiety was actually a symptom of having to constantly be like a circular cube trying to fit into a square hole all the time. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues as well is the focus thing, like the hyper focus on. So what happens? I mean, I'll get to the diagnosis and the process and everything soon, but again, just talking about symptoms, I'm still trying to understand this condition because it's not that well researched in adults. It's it tends to be a thing that gets diagnosed in kids, and then if you make it to adulthood and you've done a relatively successful life, we don't really want to give you the diagnosis, which again I'm going to talk about.
I think people think that you grow out of it as well. Like,
Yeah.
I think either people think you grow out of it, or it's something that's diagnosed to like naughty children, and like because the diagnoses are on the up, people like there's definitely a consensus of like, it's not a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, like what you just touched on, that idea of like I often beat myself up because I thought I was lazy, but I'm not lazy at all. It's just my attention just shifts so quickly that I just don't think about the consequences of some things. Oh, little doggy's arriving.
Potter's decided to come in. If you're on YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see the famous Potter, our 7-year-old retired racing greyhound, and we also have a 3-year-old, which is very, very lazy. 3-year-old dog, not 3-year-old human. But yeah, sorry, what were you saying?
So I guess I was just touching on the focus thing, which is how I guess I really know that I do have it, and how I knew that it was a big problem is like what happens is you enter a period of like hyper focus with certain things, but you can't choose what that is. So some days I'll be trying to do work, and then I'll think about like playing a game or like reading
Fixing
something,
a shelf or something,
or
even
like
if
doing
it's something
something,
like
and I
that, yeah.
have to do that thing. Like it's I just have to do it, and I'm getting better now at realizing that that's just a symptom of the condition. So
Yeah.
I can indulge in it and just do it, and then I feel better. But the problem comes like on a night time. I've always had trouble sleeping because I just cannot switch off. If I've got anything on my mind, I turn it over, turn it over, turn it over. And anyway, all of these things persisted after I started taking the antidepressants, and I thought, well, maybe I should do something about it. And Ellen long ago had read about ADD because of a YouTuber she likes, Rihanna, I
Yeah.
think, who'd like went through a similar journey to me, and she also, I think, had been diagnosed with it, actually.
As an adult, yeah, and she also talked about being misdiagnosed with depression and cyclothymia, which is like a small version of like a kind of smaller version of bipolar, I guess, with mood swings. And I've always joked about Craig's mood swings, but like he does sometimes. It's not a mood swing in a sense of anger or anything, but it's just mood swings where you can be very, very, very happy, almost like manic, and then within hours you can be quite down about it. So now we know that that's actually a really common ADD thing. And also what you were saying about hyperfocus, I think is really interesting, because it's just like the idea that you can't get away from that thing, and you're like, I read somewhere that hyperfocus and people with ADD are almost like addicted to dopamine, because when you complete a task or when you do the thing that your brain really wants to do, the same as if you're I like to write a list, and when you check off the list you get that like hit of dopamine because you've achieved something. But people with ADD have got this like intense connection to dopamine, where they like feel like they need to do the thing and get the dopamine, and do the thing and get the dopamine.
Yeah, and I get that because it kind of explains some of the things about like the games I choose to play. Or often,
Yeah.
I really like like, I don't want to get into nerd culture, but I like games like roguelikes where it's like short bursts of a run. Like when you die, you start again, but you unlock things incrementally.
But equally with those runs, like, I don't know because I don't play those games, but normally the runs are different. So like they auto-generate, and you don't like to do the same thing over and over. So it's similar enough, but different enough.
Yeah, that's why I like those kind of games. I think they like really hit that reward center. I didn't think about that until you said about the dopamine release, and I guess it's why I have to like even like at the moment the chess hyperfixation is like. Because I play that and then I win and I'm like, oh, yes.
Yeah, we watched The Queen's Gambit a couple of months ago now, like when it first came out, and then we were playing a little bit of chess, but when we got a chessboard for Christmas off my brother Joe, and then we've been playing against each other quite a lot. But then Craig's on chess.com, and like in the time that I've played like 50 games on chess.com, maybe on my lunch break or when I'm needing a break, Craig's played like 220 or something like that.
More,
so it
probably.
Just shows that the difference between like the intense focus. Or like, which is Craig's eating a banana now. This segment.
Don't screen cap whisper.
This segment will go on our Conversations by the Sea OnlyFans.
I'm sorry, I'm hungry. So anyway, all of this is a long way around talking about the diagnosis period, which I think would be interesting because if anyone's listening who thinks they might have it, it's worth knowing about. So what happened was I mentioned it to my doctor who prescribed me the antidepressants, and he said like I don't think you've got this because adults who have it tend to not be able to like get anything done. You've got to you've held down jobs, you've done like quite well in your life.
I think this was like the big thing that came all the way through the diagnosis, which went on for nearly 2 years. Is like even the ADD consultant expert who we finally got to speak to repeatedly asked like what the effect of the ADD was, and like, well, somebody is quote like traditionally successful because he's got a job and we've been together for a long time and he owns a house, and like somebody with a condition that lends itself to impulsiveness wouldn't potentially be able to do those things. But that was something that we had to kind of explain to them, that like you can fit into the box and do it for a certain amount of time, but trying to force yourself to be that person in the office or that person in the relationship or whatever then resulted in a lot of anxiety and depression as a result. I think that was like the bit that the doctors took a little while to get their heads around.
Yeah, I think so. And then from there I got referred to the ADHD unit in St Nick's Hospital in Gosforth, and I had to do like a video because it's all happened during the pandemic. Almost like a year later, after I'd asked that doctor for that referral, I was asked to do like a video interview, so I accepted, and I did it with a doctor called Surinder, and she took me through like questions and stuff, and to be honest, I felt like she was trying to sort of infer that I didn't have it, because she, like Ellen keeps saying, mentioning, you know, that I had a job and stuff like that, which seems ridiculous to me, because, you know, yeah, I've managed in my life, but it's always been a struggle, and if I can be better, then, you know, if I can help treat the condition and have a better life as a result, like, what difference does it make whether I've held down a job or not? Anyway, she didn't seem that keen, but then she spoke to Ellen and my mother in separate interviews, just to sort of ask about me as a child, and you know, Ellen, like, what it was like living with me. And I think that kind of helped fill out the picture, because I'm not very good really at explaining the impact my actions have on people, because the way I think is just the way I think. And I am like quite, you know, introspective, and I try and like eloquate, is that the right word?
Articulate
I mean, eloquate. Articulate, like, you know, the way my brain works to people, but it's not that easy. So anyway, after speaking to them, I was like given the diagnosis after Surinder took it to like a team of experts who had to agree with her. And we got the diagnosis anyway, which was great news for me, because it was just a massive relief. Just to know, even if that was it, even if I just had the diagnosis,
yeah, and there was no medication or anything,
it would have been good just to have some vindication, because now I can, like, now that I've read more about the condition as well, I understand so much more about myself. And Ellen as well, I think, is much more forgiving of my, like, things that could be quite annoying, like she says, you know, just leaving shoes out and stuff all the time. Like, I know that it seems small maybe when we're saying it, but I do a lot of stuff like that, you know. I forget a lot of things. And
yeah, you do a lot of half jobs, like you'll half do the dishes, and then, or you'll half do, you know, you're very much like a half job kind of person. It's not through lack of intent of wanting to do those things, it's more just like you immediately think, oh, I'll just go on chess. And
it's like some things are a complete blind spot as well. Like, I just don't even think about some stuff, like when you mentioned, I forgot some banana on OnlyFans. So yeah, I got the diagnosis, and then I'm now in the process of like getting on some medication that might help. I have to get an ECG first, because my father had some troubles with his heart, and he's like 65, so they said that, like, you know, that's enough to warrant some kind of, just a check really, to make sure, because the medication is a stimulant, so it'd be dangerous if I had a bad heart. I think I'll be fine. I'm pretty fit and healthy. You know, I exercise all the time, and I think I'll be fine. But anyway, I'm waiting for that now. I'm waiting for that, and then I'll go on the medication. And really, I'm just going to try and be optimistic about it. I'm a little bit scared, because obviously, you know, you're taking a medication that's going to affect your mind, and it's always like, you know, what's the risk of that? But I thought that as well about the antidepressants, and I was really against taking them for ages. And I thought, you know, this is who I am. I don't need them. And then it turned out to be fine. So I think, you know, I'll just give it a go. Unlike the antidepressants, I don't think that there's as many withdrawals and stuff with these, so I can sort of try them. And I can't even tell you the name, because I'm terrible and forgetful. But once I get them, I'll talk about them more on the podcast.
Yeah,
and
maybe we'll do like a 6 month, or I don't know how long it takes, but we'll do like another update in a few months and talk about the start of being on the medication. And like we've said already, we're not medical experts, and we're not exclusively going to talk about you know, the medical side of mental health, but it is something that, you know, you can't really avoid when you talk about mental health. And we're definitely, if you know us in person, you'll know that we're very passionate about mental health, but we're also very against like a like hippy dippy, like we're quite we are science based people, and we're interested in that. And although we understand the benefits of mindfulness and wellness as a whole subject, we're definitely not averse to, you know, looking at what the medical side of things are. And I think we've got quite a balanced approach to that. But
yeah, I think we're good at things like, you know, a lot of like tenets from like wellness and stuff, like being kind to yourself, and
absolutely,
you know, living slowly and stuff like that. But I think that paired with medicine, it's an effective approach. I don't really buy any of the anti-medicine stuff. I mean, I'm not going to go on a rant, but
yeah, I suppose it's different for everybody. But yeah, I suppose, like, since the podcast in general and the newsletter is about work and freelancing, do you want to talk about like the difference between having a proper job where you work in an office versus like having, and then how that was working from home but still for that company, you don't have to say about specifics, versus like working for yourself / working with me, because obviously we are co-directors. So even though I started the business as a sole trader, when Craig joined we went limited, and we have equal shares in the business, because I suppose, on an aside note, some people might ask me why I did that and gave away half of an asset. First of all, like, didn't give it away because like Craig's my partner in life, so didn't feel like that. But also, the way I see it is that the business wouldn't have existed had Craig not have, like, you know, held down a stable job and come home from Australia. And it's a bit like raising a child. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do that thing without you being there doing your thing. So it seemed like a no-brainer for Craig to have like a. And I did speak to a couple of accountants, and one accountant said not to give away and just to give him a couple of shares, and one had said to split it 50-50. So maybe that's a future topic about working with your partner, living with your partner. And,
I think that'd be a really good one, because a lot of people pull us up both like on different ways, and I often get like a different style of question to you.
Yeah, we definitely have different people. Like, so we're going off on a tangent, but because I do some of the more technical side of the business with the web design, and Craig, as his title says, is a very much creative ideas person. People often assume, because of our gender, that I'm the creative colouring in person and Craig is the technical person, but actually it just so happens to be the other way around. But anyway, do you want to go back to that question that I said that I've now forgotten?
Yeah, where you were asking about the difference between, like, you know,
working
like,
for yourself and working for someone else with
ADD.
Yeah.
So I think, obviously, first, I think it's important to define the difference between, well, it's not defined because, you know, you can just Google it, but there's a big difference between, like, just being a procrastinator and having ADD. You know, for me, procrastination is a must. I can't work unless I can, like, flick off onto Reddit or, you know, take 5 minutes to do something. Like, even things like a Pomodoro method and stuff like that, which
too long.
is good for some people. It's too long. My attention span can literally change every minute.
Oh, I just realised on that topic, something we haven't talked about is the boil shutdown. I suppose that because in past jobs that you've had, it's actually like, it's been noticed by other people that like Craig's attention span is so poor that, and if Ryan and Richard are listening to this, they coined the phrase, but just the idea that you can be having a conversation with Craig and you can literally just, he'll ask you a question about yourself and walk away before you respond.
Yeah, I'm really bad for that, and I don't, like, there's no maliciousness in it, and I've tried really hard not to do it anymore. But the problem is, like, and the honest thing behind it is, I'll ask someone something, they start answering, I kind of intuit what I wanted from that question, and then that's it for me. I don't need to hear any more. But obviously, that's a completely ridiculous way to interact with someone. So I try not to do that. And I think, actually, in all of this diagnosis, the doctor suggested that I might have some, like, Asperger's, like, or autistic tendencies as well. But there's no medication for that, and the diagnosis is another year-long process, and I can't really be bothered. You know, if I am somewhat on the spectrum, that's totally fine with me. And it would explain how, like, I don't really get, like, super emotional about certain things.
Yeah, and maybe you're not the most intuitive person about other people's emotions. Like, but then also, if you ever found, like, in this hypothetical situation, you might not be intuitive about someone's emotion, but if you ever found out that something you had done had upset someone, like, it would really destroy you. Like,
I don't like to hurt people. I really don't like to upset people, and I tend to grovel when I do as well, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. The thing is, I hurt people quick. Like, I often hurt people by, like, you know, challenging them on something or arguing with them, and then I, like, try and claw it back because I don't mean to hurt anyone. It's just I can't not argue with someone if they say something I disagree with.
But you also love a good debate, so I don't know if that's part of it, or if it's just like,
I think that's just part of my personality
that we like to have both of us like to have a debate about, and sometimes we'll both have, like, a big long debate with each other about something that's not even affecting either
we'll
of us.
get really wound up, and then it's like, who cares what the price of a banana in Aldi is? It's stupid. I think I'll just go back to that question though, because it's, you know, time's getting on, and mainly we've just waffled about me, and I don't know how interesting that is. But
I know, I'm trying to keep, I haven't got a time frame for them, but maybe, like, we'll see how we get on with, like, half an hour, 40-minute episodes, and then if people think they're too long, we can cut them more. If people want to hear us ramble more, which is unlikely, they can talk for longer.
If anyone even listens to it.
Yeah.
But have we lost the camera?
No.
Oh dear, our camera's died. We're still recording though, so I'll just wait until Ellen fixes that camera, maybe. I'll do a little song. How's this?
Okay, now we're back.
We're back.
Let's just pretend we took an ad break.
Okay, ad break, yeah. A little singing ad break. Right. So, obviously, working in a full-time job is so difficult for some people with ADD.
Like a full-time office job,
yeah,
you mean?
they can't do it. So, obviously, that was a main one of the points of contention for my diagnosis was that I had done it for so long. But what they didn't know is when I worked in offices, I became a master at like cramming in what needed to be done quickly and doing a really good job of. I'm a copywriter by trade. I don't know if I mentioned that. Well, I suppose we have because of a job. But with the thing is with writing for me is like I can write what some people would take 3 hours to write in like 30 minutes. And like I'm not boasting. That just is how my brain works. I can just spill out.
But equally, you couldn't do that 30 minutes without the 2.5 hours of procrastination. Yeah. So technically, you're just as productive in the 3 hours as that other person is. But you just spent 2.5 hours on Reddit or chess.com.
So what I learned to do was, have almost all agencies work the same way, where you've got like if you're on the delivery team, you have time planned in for a task. And that time is generally like the same sort of time every other team member gets. So what I got really good at is like if I had 2 hours planned for a 500-word article, is writing for like probably half an hour total, and then an hour and a half of taking breaks in between, then just like jumping onto Reddit, jumping onto something that I was interested in, watching a bit of YouTube. And it seems like a bizarre way to work, and it is really, but I got it done. And I think I became really good at just sort of getting stuff done. And because my brain is capable of like pulling creativity out of thin air as well, I had like a good reputation at all the agencies I worked at for being like an ideas person.
Yeah, you always did well in meetings or client facing things where you could just say like an idea, and then a bit of a Donald Draper where that idea would like keep you going for like a couple of weeks because everyone would remember that was your idea. Because
I guess that's a power, like a superpower of ADHD in general, is that especially in like meeting situations and stuff, is you're really receptive, like because your energy is really high and you can't really focus on one thing. You tend to just like it's I find it easy to start ideating in those meetings and like just coming up with stuff and bouncing off what other people are saying. I probably have a tendency to dominate the meeting though, and talk too much, but that's always been the case in my life. Now only Ellen can equal me for talking too much. What I wanted to also say was I read something just yesterday, because I'm learning about it all the time, is apparently a really common thing that people with ADHD have is rejection syndrome disorder. And I brought it up to Ellen last night, and she was like, well, how often do you face rejection in your life? But I don't think she realised is what it means is sometimes I won't do something because I think I might get rejected. And it's the same with like ideas and stuff. If my idea wasn't the one listened to, I'd go on a real downer about it, especially before the antidepressants. It could be enough to knock me into like a spiral of depression if I was in a meeting at an agency and like someone else's idea was chosen above mine, or even worse, mine was just completely ignored and not talked about.
Yeah.
And that's faced through like I've been really bad with rejection all through my life. I think I had some sort of challenges growing up with, like most people do, with like their parents and clashes with my dad and stuff like that. And he's a very strict guy, so like often I think I didn't want to come to him in case of rejection and stuff, and I didn't want to, when I was like in school and stuff, I didn't really try and make many friends outside my circle because I kind of got bullied a bit and I just didn't want to take the risk. Doing a lot of ams, aren't I? I'll get that.
Yeah, it's alright, don't worry, I'm not going to be able to edit the video and the audio, so you're just going to have to deal with the M's.
But yeah, rejection syndrome disorder is a big part of it. So if you feel like you might be like super overly
sensitive to rejection,
if you're actively avoiding doing things for fear of rejection, that's like a common thing.
I think that's common for everybody, like not as extreme as what you're saying, because I know, because there were obviously jobs and stuff, that opportunities that came up when we first met, or within the first couple of years, where you wanted to work in marketing and copywriting and you didn't take them, and I kind of pushed you to take them. But I do think that all of us have a fear of rejection. For a long time, I got every job that I'd ever interviewed for, and it was like a badge of honor. And then I think I had interviewed for a job in maybe 2015-ish, and I didn't get it because I'd asked for more money. It was a startup and they didn't have enough money, basically. And it was just like a thing that I was like, for a long time, I was very confident in job interviews, and it definitely knocked me.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some elements of that as well, because it's the same. We're both the same with feedback, like any negative.
Yeah, maybe that's a whole episode about criticism and dealing with criticism, because like as a copywriter or a designer or any kind of creative person that puts their heart and soul into their work, having people criticize it, and like I'm terrible with taking criticism. Like I know that I am, like even just somebody changing one thing or questioning one thing in a Google Doc will spiral me, and that they even
The worst part is that it can be like 10 good things and one bad thing, and you're just like, a bad thing, you know?
Yeah, just like the newsletter a couple of weeks ago where I got loads of positive responses to setting boundaries and saying no, and then there was like a couple of people who disagreed with that point. And like, I call myself a big lover of debate, but I also don't like it when people disagree with me. So anyway, we're getting to half an hour point now. So anything that you want to finish off on about ADD for the listeners?
I guess just to finish your question, viewers, really, is that it's better, like working for myself is a lot better because I don't feel as constrained by like, you know, having to do this in this time or having to do, you know, mainly the flexibility of the day. You know, I can have a lie in. I'm really bad in mornings, so I don't mind starting work later because I know I can work later. I can jump on some work.
Well, you're just a night owl. It's not about being like bad in mornings. It's just like I'm bad. You could say that I'm bad on night times because I can't function after like 4 o'clock. But it's just that
I can work like from where I want as well, which is obviously not at the moment because of the pandemic. I just work from home all the time. But you know, theoretically, I'll be able to like pop out to coffee shops and you know just get my head out of places. Whereas when you work for someone, you've got your dinner hour and that's about it.
Yeah.
Dinner hour. I should have said lunch, shouldn't I? Really, if this is going outside the northeast, we call everything dinner, right? It's dinner time.
Actually, dinner is like if you're listening to this or if you're on YouTube and you've got this far into our rambles, hey, you can comment down below with what you call the lunch, the meal in the middle of the day. So that's probably the end of this episode. Do you want to should we end it with like a little segment about like things that we're enjoying right now, or do you want to like I do in the newsletter? Mm-hmm. You got something to share other than chess.com? Is there anything else you're doing with your life other than chess.com?
Well, crickets. I mean, I got back into my childhood hobby of painting Warhammer. Which you touched on before. I think I like that a lot because I'm really creative, but I'm not very good at anything except writing. You know, like I'm not a very good drawer or painter or musician or anything.
Not that you have to be good at things to do them.
I know, but like, you know, I like to be good at things that I do. Whereas with Warhammer, it's like painting a miniature is different, and you know, I'm getting good at that, and I'm learning how to do it. So that's quite a nice process, and I can just focus on that and nothing else. So yeah, I've been enjoying that.
It's probably a hyper focus thing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Unless you're also listening to an audiobook. Which I am. Yeah. Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, fourth book in the Stormlight Archives. Pretty epic. If you like fantasy, I'd recommend it. It's great. I've already read it and it was amazing. This week I've been reading a couple of books. I suppose the one I'm just about to finish today is The Transition Baby by Tori Peters, which is like a literary fiction book by a trans woman about like a trans couple that have a baby with a third person. It's very complicated to explain, but it's really, really good. It was actually only published last month, January 21. I would highly recommend it so far. It's just like, it's funny, but it's also, you know, emotional and traumatic and just all different things. So I do read a lot of fantasy, but every so often I'll take a break from fantasy for a literary fiction book. So I would highly recommend that. I'm going to put that in the description and the show notes if I've worked out how to upload this podcast. Obviously, if you're listening to it, then I've worked it out. But that's probably it from us today. Next week we're gonna try and do this once a week. I think maybe we'll back record a couple of episodes today. So if you're watching on the video, we might be wearing the same clothes because we recorded them on the same day, not because we're tramps. Well, I don't know if I've got the energy to do more than one a day. Like, ooh. Okay, we'll see. Yep, thanks very much for listening, watching. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Content by the Sea, that's me, and at Craig T. Boyle is this guy. B-Y-L-E. B. Wiley. B-O-Y-L-E. Oh, right, okay. And subscribe to the newsletter if you want to, and all the other things. Oh, we're supposed to say subscribe, smash that like button. What for? YouTube. Oh, for YouTube. Yeah, I don't know how. I don't watch YouTube as much as you. Subscribe. Yeah. Click like. Stay up to date. Woo. Okay. Don't you have to press? Not just like. Don't you have to press like the thing? You have to turn on your notifications now. Yeah, turn on your notifications. But you don't have to do that if you don't want to. So. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye. Bye.